Hello, everyone. We are Elise and Francisco. We're the co-founders of OkaySo, and we are doing a series of quick, sort of 10, 15-minute conversations, really highlighting the things that we see young people struggling with on OkaySo. I'm really, really glad that you're here with me today, Francisco.
I'm always happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Yay!
um, so I'm tempted to just dive right in.
Let's do it.
Um, okay, I want to use as an entry point sort of this statistic that I think is really sobering, among other things. And it says that 40% of women describe their first sexual experience as unwanted. 40%. 40%, which obviously is a really large percentage of people. One of many questions on my mind is, what do you think are some of the reasons why so many people are having sexual experiences that they don't want?
Yeah, yeah. This statistic like haunts me because I think, if you think about just how many people that is, it's just like such a sort of tremendous amount of people that are having sexual experiences they don't want for the first time even, right? Which sort of is like, how does that then kind of mark or affect the other experiences that you have after that, if that was your first time? And I think what is particularly hard about this is that there are, I think, so many kind of interwoven things that are going on for folks, which kind of lead to these kinds of situations happening. I think one is that, the sort of media and cultural messages that we're getting are so huge. We see this all the time on OkaySo. Folks who are, and this, right? Folks who are like, you have to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, like, right? That's what it means to be, sort of being a teenager in like the right way. Like, um, this idea that like everyone is thinking about sex, everyone wants
Mm.
to have sex, obviously, right? And ideas around sort of who should be trying to have sex, right? Boys should be wanting to have as much sex as possible, and sort of those ideas. We just did a workshop recently where we were talking about how we showed a bunch of different clips from television and movies that really are framed around this idea of like girls and women don't really know what they want and you should keep
Mm.
pushing and then eventually they'll give in. Like that kind of storyline is everywhere, everywhere in our culture. And so that would be one of the places that I would start, is that I think there are so many messages that young people are getting that say, you should want this, you should be doing this, you should be pushing for this, you're not complete until this has happened. That it's really hard for young people who are still discovering who they are to like tap into, what do I actually really want right now versus what do I feel like I'm supposed to want.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking as you're saying that about, yeah, that question of what do I want? And I mean, when I work with adults, it's a question that I work with adults on, you know? And so, and when I'm thinking about younger people and how we historically and still don't often have any kind of like allow for any kind of space where young people can ask that kind of question for themselves in a meaningful way around, especially in many areas, but especially in around things related to their interests in relationships or dating or expression, sexual expression, or whatever it may be, or gender expression. So many sort of ways that these are like, there are gatekeepers and official and unofficial rules and mandates and threats and wagging fingers and all of that. And so, like, even if it's not the norm, and in fact it feels to me like it's a discouraged thing. Like there is not that sort of like space. We don't have that space to be able to even think about those kinds of questions. And I'm so delighted when a lot of times when I'm speaking with maybe college age students, for example, or people who are in environments where they feel safe or safe enough to begin exploring things kind of on their own, dot, 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 at last is what it sometimes feels like. That's how it gets kind of shared with me. I'm always delighted to see, for example, so many people saying, I'm curious about asexual. I feel like maybe I'm asexual, or I actually don't know what I want, or all of this sort of thing. To finally have that space to be able to say, I don't know. I'd like to figure it out. I am, or this is what I've known all along. Whatever it is, that those moments when people are really able to say for themselves and for others, kind of who they are and what it is that they're looking for, it can be a really empowering moment. But especially as younger folks, that is discouraged and seen as like, a really potentially bad and dangerous thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're so right. And I think it's such an interesting thing. I think we were talking about this in the last session too, that there's ideally, right, adolescence is this time of growing into adulthood and discovering who you are and what you're passionate about, what you love, where you want to live, who you want to, right, what your values are, who you want to be. And even in other areas of life, I think we do this, right? I think we talk to young people who have all of the, like, if we go back to this sort of the I'm supposed to's,
Mm,
right? The sort of I'm supposed to go to this kind of school. I'm supposed to have this kind of job. I'm supposed to want this kind of family at this kind of time, right? I'm supposed all it's like these like just like I almost picture them as like these like suitcases if I like I'm supposed to that I feel like people are sort of carrying around and in many ways I think living lives that are really not just not authentically
mm,
their own but where people maybe don't even realize how far away like they don't even know how to start we get this question on OkaySo all the time where people are like how do I figure out who I am right? Like people don't people like know that something feels off, but they don't even know how do I listen to the inner
mm,
voice of myself? How do I think about and separate all of the other voices
mm.
that have been telling me, what to do or what I should do and listen to who I really am. And I think we really often don't give young people the space or maybe even the tools to figure out how to do that.
Yes. As you're saying that, I have all sorts of thoughts flowing in my head. One is uh, that not only do they not have sort of the spaces to think about those things or inquire or challenge sort of messages, but even just in thinking about, I think a lot about scripts and sort of like, oh, I'm,
Mm,
present this way and I'm X age and I should be worrying out, on the lookout for this negative thing and I should be going towards this positive thing, whatever these things are. And and these are the options. It's A, B, C, or D, maybe E, right? And um, even just sort of the knowledge or appreciation of all of the different ways of being in the world. I'm thinking a lot about asexuality recently in conversations that I'm having with a lot of young people around being ace. And, even sort of conversations about that. I'm thinking about all of the moments where I've been teaching sex ed in schools over the years, and I'm told either directly or indirectly in advance, please do not talk about the following subjects, colon, this,
yeah.
this, this, or uh, please only talk about the following subjects if asked. And if asked, please only say approximately 2 to 3 sentences and mention that there is great diversity and people make their own decisions, which actually is a great message. There's lots of diversity and people make their own decisions, but even sort of the awareness of all of the kind of I don't even know what the word is, diversity or um, myriad experiences that people could be choosing to have, including very much so like not being sexually active with a partner, for example, among so many other uh, things that people may choose for themselves, completely not related to sexual expression, even. Um, that it feels like there's not a lot of a lot of room for that discussion of all of the different ways to be, and I think that just talking this over with you, and I feel like we talk about these things all the time, and yet it's occurring to me that the conversations are not had sort of with ourselves, like that space to be wondering about them. And if I can't have the conversation with myself, how on earth could I have the conversation about something that I have not conversed internally about with you, with a partner, with somebody else? How on earth can I make that happen? So when I think about that original statistic or reality, um, for people, it's sadly it doesn't feel like a surprise.
No, no. And I think, and you mentioned schools, and I think that's the other piece of this is that consent and these kinds of conversations about because of all the things you're not allowed to talk about and you're not allowed to say, there are, probably over half of young people are not being exposed to even the idea that these conversations exist and that you can have them with yourself and with your partners, and you can talk about it with your friends, and right, like it just is not there at all. And so I feel like young people are sort of coming in to these situations with none of the tools that they really need in order to really kind of get in touch with who they are, to understand that you don't have to do something. Just the simple, right? Like just the simple idea that if there's any hesitation that you're feeling, you don't have to do it, and your partner should respect that. Like, I
Mm.
think that as a concept is something that people are
Mm.
not told. And if you look around at, right, every movie, every whatever it's rare to find that kind of messaging happening. It's usually something else, right? Something that's much less consensual, has more coercion. And so I think if if young people are not told that at school,
Mm-hmm.
are their parents necessarily going to have the language to tell them? Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
And so where do they turn to, right? Like where do they turn to figure this stuff out? And I think it's we see this so often on OkaySo. I think so often we are the people who are saying this for the first time to someone ever in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, and often sometimes we're too late, right? Like sometimes, I mean, not too late in the sense of like ever and ever in
Right,
their lives,
right, right.
but sometimes they're coming to us because something has already happened.
Mm.
Um, but even being able to say that to someone for whom it has already happened, because I think, we frequently talk to people who then feel like something is wrong with them
Mm.
because again, I'm
Right.
supposed to, right? If you think I'm supposed to want this and you didn't and it felt awful, we have young people who come to us and share stories that are devastating, and they're worried that something is wrong with them, because even though it's clear to any of us as experts on OkaySo, and you know this, right, that what happened to them was not consensual, their feeling is that they should have handled it better, they should have wanted it, they're supposed to this, they're supposed to that. And so they come to us feeling broken
Mm.
when what actually happened was that they had an experience that they did not consent to. And I think so much of the reason for that is because young people don't even realize that's how it
Mm.
could be, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just they're just taking everything in that they're seeing or hearing from the world, and then these kinds of situations
Mm-hmm.
then are almost the inevitable result of that.
Yeah, about like broken, the thing doesn't feel like the person having that experience, of course, is broken. But like what I keep every when I keep thinking about the statistic that we let off, I mean, to me, it's just like alarm, but like it's the most. Anytime I see that, like my whole body goes like this. Even having seen and thought about that statistic so many times and talked about it in different contexts, it always lands as like a what is going on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I feel like culturally, socially, like we may be broken for having allowed like all of this to happen for us to get to this place that this is sort of like okay or okay enough, or the fact that it's not like sounding alarm bells like on a loop for people, the fact that it's sort of like either kind of expected or you know, sort of tacitly just kind of pushed over, or in some cases rewarded, or whatever it may be. Like, if it doesn't get like questioned by both like society, but also in the way, as you're saying, on OkaySo and in other places, hopefully, where people have a chance to sort of hold up this thing that's happening and examine it and say, wait a minute, like this is actually how this was my experience. If and it's getting validated by some other human. If that change isn't happening, then it's no wonder that this continues, and that this is you know the way, like this is our current reality.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think so it's about we're going to wrap up in just a second. And I think, one of the things that this always sort of makes me think about is how sort of proactive we need to be. And I think often we're sort of reactive when it comes to young people and sexual health, but really how much it's about thinking about the messages that we want to be out there in the world and kind of sending those messages out to young people so that they're hearing them hopefully way before they need them, instead of kind of finding themselves in a place where they're finding out this really important message afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for this. You're one of my favorite people to talk to ever in the world. And thank you to everyone watching this later. And we're going to do this again. So be on the lookout for other sessions, and we will see you next time.